Thanks, Chris. Although, screw you for putting me on after Dragonfly Earth Medicine. No. No. I think I'm going to scrap my whole presentation and start over because we like to touch on some similar themes. How about Dragonfly Earth Medicine, everyone? Beautiful people. So last year at the symposium, Chris kind of had the question, like, how do we bring living soil up to that larger scale? How do we really apply these things that we're talking about to do something to help the planet and to grow things better? And I was inspired by some old school hip hop actually for that, and I brought it back to Cool Herc and mixing the first records and making something new out of all these different techniques, and kind of like what Dragonfly Earth Medicine is doing, taking all of these ideas and putting them all together and seeing what works. I think it's a very similar idea of taking these hybrids and just being ready to be in the moment and pay attention and look and listen and feel and make choices that seem to work. You know, that with DJing, you're rocking the party, and we're trying to rock these soil microbes, get everything dancing and grooving. So this time I kind of wanted to actually go real far back. I want to start with, I guess, the very beginning. We're going to go way old school, and we'll do the origins of everything through Greek mythology. So first, there was chaos. And chaos in the Greek name, chaos, it's actually the void. It's nothing. And in a way, we think of that as being different from our concept of chaos, where everything's crazy. And but really, actually, I think they kind of are the same thing, because through quantum mechanics, when we look at the void, we've found that it's actually teeming with activity. There's these things called virtual pairs that are erupting out of every little point of space. It's erupting everywhere in between us, but out in the void of space, there's these teeny little virtual pairs that are coming out of nothing. And one part is positive and one part's negative. They're basically counter parts of each other, and they pop out into existence, and then they're immediately squashed out of existence. The more energetic they are, the faster they're squashed out of existence. Strange, but this is what we've found through experiments in quantum mechanics. And at the heart of that is there's this duality, this of being able to get something through balance. And the separation of these pairs, it can exist because one's positive and one's negative. Where did everything in the universe come from? It came from nothing. And the first law of thermodynamics is energy cannot be created or destroyed, but merely transferred. So where did it all come from? Well, nothing. So maybe it's all zero. Maybe it's all balanced. Maybe there's the same amount of dark matter as there's regular matter. There's antimatter and the matter that we know and we can see. But now through observing galaxies and universes, we can actually, galaxies in the universe, we can see the changes, the physical changes that are due to the presence of dark matter. So I think all that's very interesting, that the idea of dichotomy and things coming from nothing things coming from nothing, but it's balanced. And that's how it works. Just like a credit card, you have to pay it at the end. You get stuff, but there's something debited, and we see that through everything. There's a price that we pay for everything that we do, unless you do it in a way that gives back. So this image, a lot of times I'm asked, like, oh, what is Biovortex? What do you do? Are you you sell soil? You sell compost? Like, no, like I make soil, but I show people how to make soil. You're a seed company? No, but I breed. I make seeds, and I share seeds. I'm part of creating, working with the plant in that way. People ask, like, oh, you make vortex brewers? Like, yeah, I make vortex brew, but I'm not selling them. That's not the business. What Biovortex is a conceptual art piece, and the desire of this art piece is to influence the cannabis industry at this moment to take a different path, a regenerative path. And because we have a blank canvas right now, there's agriculture. We know how horrible of a path agriculture has gone down. It is the most destructive thing on this planet, and we need it to feed ourselves. But it's so entrenched, and the corruption and the lobbying and the money that's being made by the people putting up loans and making the machines and the chemicals, it's so entrenched. We're kind of, kind of screwed. But cannabis, we have this canvas at this moment where we can make something new and we can do something different. And we have people like you that are interested in this and who want to do this right now, who want to make a difference, and they want to grow the best quality flowers. And at the same time, the way to do that is a way to show how we can save the planet through agriculture. So now let's go into Greek mythology a little bit. So first there was chaos, then there was Gaia, and Gaia is Earth. Along with Gaia, there was Eros, love, and that's the beginning. There's Earth and there's love. And I think that actually works well with quantum mechanics too. Like the idea of freedom and love, I think, are similar. The idea of existence, I think, comes from the concept of love. I think that is what everything is. So then from that we had Uranus, who was born from Gaia, and Okeanos, which is the ocean, and Uranus we know as the planet, but it actually is the universe. And they had the first generation of the 12 Titans. One of those Titans was Kronos, and Kronos, basically, Uranus was afraid that Kronos would take over his position of being the universe and the ruler, and he wouldn't let any of the Uranus wouldn't let the Titans leave Gaia's womb, and so that pissed Gaia off. So she helped Kronos basically usurp Uranus by cutting his nuts off and throwing him into the oceans of Earth, which is kind of interesting. We know the image of Aphrodite rising from the ocean, the famous Botticelli painting where everything's very clean and she's like, it's a seashell. Well, she's actually rising out of the froth from a severed testicles. It's blood and semen. And, and we like to make everything overly neat. And I think, getting into the gritty of like what it is to be alive and human and, a lot of the stuff that Dragonfly was talking about, we try to sterilize everything, and I think it's not good. I don't think it's good for us. So from Kronos, with the help of Metis, Kronos, at that point, we actually had the first race of the gods. Kronos with Gaia had Zeus and Demeter and Hera and Hestia, Hades, and Poseidon, but again, he was afraid that they would take over just like how he did with Uranus, and so he swallowed all of them. There's a famous painting by Goya of Uranus, of Kronos, Saturn devouring his children. It's really graphic and fun. It's like this dead body, he's like, but he just swallows them whole, and eventually Zeus comes and helps, basically gets him to regurgitate, or Zeus is actually hidden, and with the help of Metis, hidden inside Gaia, he comes out and helps puke up all of his brothers and sisters. And from that, at that point, basically the other Titans sided with Kronos at that point, and a couple of them sided with Zeus, one most notably Prometheus. And with the help of Metis, who actually is one of the Titans who she contained all of the wisdom of the universe within her. Her and Zeus, her and Zeus made it and had Athena, and Athena was born actually out of Zeus's head. She laid him in Zeus's head, and Hephaestus had to break open his head, and she popped out fully clothed. But so we'll get to actually the point of all of this. But so Prometheus, he's actually the one who created man. At this point, all of these other things on the world are being created. Epimetheus was in charge of creating all of the skills, all of the functions for all of the different organisms and creatures on Earth. When it came to man, Prometheus wanted to make man. All of the good skills were given up. So I think that's really applicable. I feel like it's like we look at all of these incredible plants and microbiology and all of the amazing functions that they have to regenerate and to give birth to forests and beautiful ecosystems and thriving abundance. And here we are with like, well, what do we do? You know, we can eat and kill stuff and poop and like, like, you know, which is all part of it, but you know, we're a little bit separate. But the way Prometheus made us was he made us out of earth, out of soil, out of mud, out of water and soil. And humus, the word humus and human are the same word. They're the same. They mean the same thing. And I think that's very much the case. I think we are humus. We are living soil in a very real way. So I love that Greek mythology understood that so far back, that we are made up from the humus created from this microbiology, that we are connected. We are the same thing as this humus in the soil. It's the microbiology that is able to ingest these nutrients, these different minerals, and process it so we can build plants, and then those plants can be eaten, and that's what really builds flesh and bone is humus. So in a very real way, that is absolutely the case, that we are humus. And I think if we really, really put that in our hearts, and I think we will change the way we do things on the planet. So at this point, Prometheus was like, well, the one skill the one thing I can do for people that's different is I can make them walk on two legs, and I can make them in the image of the gods. And that pissed Zeus off. It was like, these mortals, and they suck. Like, humans, I don't even like humans. Like, why would you make them look like gods? And so he was upset about that. And he kind of punished human and man. And Prometheus then actually gave man fire, which really pissed Zeus off, because now we have like the ability to use fire and technology. Oh, actually, when he made man, just the like first morphing us out of soil, it was Athena who breathed life onto us. And Athena's the one who from Metis, brought all of this wisdom along with her, and she's the one who gave us agriculture and wisdom, but she also gave us war, and there's this duality, how we utilize the gifts of this intelligence that we were given to take that, to build civilizations, to do agriculture. When we don't do it in balance, it becomes very, very harmful. And so one of the things that Zeus did to punish man was to, with the help of Hephaestus, was create Pandora. And Pandora was the first woman, and she was given Pandora's box, which actually was a clay jar in old writings. We just changed that. But in that box, in that clay jar, were all the misfortunes, the woes, the disease, the pestilence of man, and of the world, basically. And the curiosity was there to open it, and it was opened, and all of these things rushed out. And we're seeing them today. But at the bottom of this jar, what was left by the time they closed it was hope. And I think we still have that. I think we have hope. And that hope is knowing that we are humus, that we are the same as the soil. We are connected with everything. And so the way that we are going to grow, the way that we're going to do agriculture, the way that we're going to grow plants and produce things, I think we need to remember that we are humus, and that is the hope. So the way I like to grow is thinking about the soil and thinking about all of these different amazing biological organisms, the worms, the mushrooms, the bacteria, all of these things working together to continue to build something. It becomes greater and greater. The thriving every year increases when everything is working together in synergy. So this image, the circle with 3 circles, originally this came from a cross-section of a zucchini and the seeds in it, and I liked it and was playing with it, and it became this kind of like vortex type image too, and just manipulated a little bit and came out with this concept. And the ideas that were going through my head were life, death, and rebirth, and that full circle. The way we do so many things are linear. You buy this, you produce this, you make this much, there's your cost, here's all your waste in the end. When we do it circular, there is no waste. The way nature does things, there is no waste. Everything is returned. So the other things I was thinking about were the realms of air and water and soil, and how they are interconnected. And so these are all part of the same thing, and the air is pulling carbon into the soil. It's pulling nitrogen in the soil through these other organisms by through the plants, through the biology. So the gas, the water, the earth, they're all exchanged in a way that makes perfect sense. And we can copy that in the way that we grow. And we have examples like Dragonfly Earth Medicine and Green Source Gardens who do this in a real way. And Green Source is an amazing example because they're actually a rec farm. And they're doing it. They're doing all of the compliance and all that nitty gritty on top of actually doing the animal care, the earth care, the forest care that goes with growing a truly healthy crop, and the polyculture that goes with that. This is very active. Actually, I think this one was from your property on the right when we did that walk. The other one was actually from Tom's worm bin, I think, over there. So a lot of cool people doing a lot of cool stuff. Here you can see the relationships with the roots. This was a mushroom bed that we did where we were growing shiitakes and stropharia and shaggy manes all in the same depth. And so we were getting flushes of mushrooms that we were eating at the days you do a little work and like, oh, we got mushrooms to eat tonight too. And but you can see there's lots of biology. There's tons of worms. You can see the roots are really working with all kinds of stuff. And there's definitely fungal relationships and bacterial relationships. And so we got nice mulch layer on top. You can actually see here up top there's a little shaggy mane. You can see the mycelium that's starting to push up, a nice edible mushroom that we use to eat cow manure. So here's a good shot of it eating a bunch of cow manure. And that's the shaggy mane popping up. So, or not cow manure, horse manure. Our neighbors have a horse, and I would go over and I would just inoculate the piles. And so when we brought it over, it would already have these big mycelia growths, and then the worms were stoked on that and would eat it, and it would become really usable humus in a very short period of time when you just think about the biology and you think about keeping it protected and feeding the biology what it wants. These are Stropharia rugosoannulata, known as the garden giant or king Stropharia. Fantastic companion plant that eats wood really quickly. It just makes a beautiful network in the soil. I love just pulling out clumps of soil and seeing the strong mycelium. And you can see some threads there. I could pick it up and hold like chunks of wood. Very, very, very strong mycelium. And then the mushrooms are crazy tasty. Really, really good. And here's some bokashi. We make our own ferments at the farm. This is one just using some wheat bran, but this is another one using actually spent mash from beer brewing. I have a friend who does a brewery called Humboldt Regeneration, and it is a nano brewery that's locally grown. He grows all of his grains and a decent amount of his hops, a little bit of imported, but very, very small amount of some stuff to make the diverse brews he does. He does about 20 different ones. Anyway, so once he brews his beer, and his farm is only maybe a quarter mile from the actual tap room, so very, very small loop transportation. He takes that mash and then he inoculates it with his own beneficial bacteria and makes his own beer kashi out of it. So that was something that we liked utilizing, a local friend and beer maker. Of course, we got the worm fins going, and worms in relation with everything else, they're just the master shredders and very fast at changing your whole soil landscape and eating all kinds of materials. These are black soldier flies. These are very interesting creatures. They eat insanely fast. They can eat meat. They can eat dairy. So like all the stuff that worms can't do, these things can do. You can feed wood, cardboard, all of the stuff to them, and they eat it really quick. And they release exudates that actually take out the smell. They break down those chemicals. And then the adult flies, they have no mouths because they lose their mouthpiece at their 6th stage as they pupate. They actually grow an appendage, and then they want to crawl out of whatever they're in. What's cool about that is you can put a little ramp in and a little collection bin, and they will collect themselves for you, and they're an incredible chicken food and fish food, and it could be people food too, very high in protein and calcium. So pretty interesting. A cool thing about this fly is it actually mimics the mud dauber, the pipe organ mud dauber wasp in its look. So it's kind of like left alone because it's like, oh, it's a wasp. Mud dauber is a very friendly wasp, but still a wasp. And if you notice, it's kind of hard to see in here, but there's a little transparent abdomen where it actually evolved to have a transparent abdomen. So when you look at it, it looks like it has the thin wasp waist at this point. Anyway, fun organisms. Just paying attention to organisms and what they can do for you, I think, is a key to all this. And then utilizing the chickens as we mulch, to go in and scratch things in and eat and poop, and you get their eggs, and yeah, it's part of the cycle. Thinking about the bees, some oregano, companion planting. Yeah, it's funny. They said, well, maybe you're not going to be planting marigolds. Well, we were. And cover cropping is so huge. Just the second you take your this was a light depth of so totally filled with cannabis. There was some companion planting as far as low growing cover crops like clovers and stuff. But as soon as it was done, we just cut them right at the base. We leave all the roots, or actually even before, sometimes when they're still there, we'll start to seed. So then the birds don't see the seeds. And then so right when you harvest, they might already start being established. You can put a little extra straw on top. And if you do it early enough, they like right before the big rains come, you get a really healthy winter crop. And these grow big, growing tons of vegetative material that can turn into beautiful humus and once it's mulched back in. But they're also taking in nitrogen from the air, and they're also taking in carbon from the air, and then they're storing that into the soil. Here's some companion planting with some clovers. So these are nodules on some of the legumes. These are bell bean nodules. Inside of them, they create a realm to allow the nitrogenase enzyme to start breaking down nitrogen into plant-usable forms instead of it just being N2, which is very, very not usable. It's triple bond. You can't break it apart. The only thing that can break it apart are, well, actually, there's two things. Well, three things now. Bacteria, lightning, actually. So when lightning hits, it breaks apart these N2 bonds, and it actually combines with oxygen and stuff in the air. And so when you actually get rain, you actually get plant-usable nitrogen raining down after lightning storms, which is pretty cool. So, but think about that, the amount of impact that it only lightning has enough power to break these things apart. It's actually the same reason why bombs work too, is because when they go back together, their energy is released, and it takes a tremendous amount of energy to release it. A lot of energy is released when they come back together. So, bacteria, that's the thing that can actually sever this incredibly strong bond. It's the rhizobium bacteria that's in the soil. It gets attracted into these nodules. The nodules put out kind of a scent to lead them in, and they create this housing where they can start working and creating plant-usable nitrogen. And then all I do is, if you pull these out, you might be losing that nitrogen. If you till, you might be losing that nitrogen. So we just mulch it right back in. We just knock everything down and sheet mulch. There's some cover crop and some mulching. So Dragonfly went into a lot of the different plants that can really aid cannabis and making ferments. And one that I'm really fond of using is horsetail. It just grows everywhere, and it grows in wet environments with absolutely no issues with mold. And part of that's the super high silica content in it. So when you ferment it, you're able to start building up the biology that can release that silica from it and make it plant available. And I find it to be the best powdery mildew and botrytis preventative I know. So encourage everyone to look into that. It's also a biodynamic prep, the 508, and it's been being used for well over 100 years like that. This is what it looks like once you ferment it. You make a tea. From that, you can do it by boiling. You can do a long style. You could look up on Josephine Porter Institute for directions for making the biodynamic 508 prep for more information. But it comes out very pretty, and it actually has a really lovely smell. And this is microbial growth on the top that's actually floating on the very top of the jar. There's a jar with some hope left in it. So, and then I make ferments actually, strangely, very similar as Dragonfly Earth Medicine, even though we've never actually exchanged that information, like totally. I mean, we're always putting stuff out, but I don't know, I found that we've, although they're way ahead of me in experience and everything, but we've naturally kind of have come to some similar conclusions on things and path. So I like to make the ferments and then make some tea and add them back in. So this is actually a ferment that utilized the comfrey that we grew on site, stinging nettle, skunk cabbage, which contains really a large amount of growth hormones that they were talking about. Also, what else? There's a little azolla in there. There was, I already said what else do we have? Oh, all the male plants. We chop the male plants and put them right in the ferment. All of your cannabis waste needs to go right back into your soil as soon as you're done with it. Like, mulch it back in, chop it up, put it back in, throw it into ferments, whatever. Why would any of that leave your soil? Put it back in. It's about returning. This is a giant compost pit that we made. It was kind of made this. There was a big trampoline, and it was dug out so it could be level, so it was safer for kids and stuff. But the trampoline had long been gone, so I used it as kind of this giant pit compost and put all of these things in together and mixed it all up, and it just went nuts with worms and mycelium and yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like that is what helps eat and return everything. Yeah, the idea of staying like clean and away from botrytis and powdery mildew is totally insane. Like it's everywhere. Like you just need to make a sterile room. It's about plant health. It's not about sterilization. It's not about poisons. And you know what? Fungicides. Like let's go into this real quick. Like you can't use them. You cannot use mycobutanol. It destroys your product. It destroys cannabis for a long time. And anyone who's an extract artist, like they know this. We're seeing insane amounts of fails, and it's pervasive. People who grow incredibly organically, who get clones from somewhere, that might have used it at one point, it could be a while down the line, will have concentrates that fail. Mycobutanol stores in the trichomes. It's similar to THC. When you concentrate, you try to like separate it, you can't. It stays right with what you're trying to concentrate and becomes more and more. Yes, Eagle 20 has a tremendous amount of mycobutanol, and then on lesser uses of it, Spectracide and Muninox. Stay away from those, and if you see them in your grow stores, tell them to take them off the shelf. If it is in a grow store for cannabis, tell them it's unethical to have that crap in there. You're poisoning people. Oh yeah, guess what? When mycobutanol burns, it burns as hydrogen cyanide. That's what we kill people in gas chambers with. This is fucking serious. Like, you can't use the shit. And it was pervasive. It was everywhere. Just to make it easier. And, you know, it worked. You can put a little bit in some, your plant. No, now we don't get powdery mildew. Oh, but now you have a completely useless product that's poisoning people. And the point of what we're doing is making medicine. Having a relationship with the plant that that's a healing one for both us and the earth. So yeah, I mean, cannabis wants to be connected with life. It wants to be connected with earth, and so do we. We need to be connected with life. We need to pay attention to what's going on. We need to honor all organisms and be a part of a polyculture. Yeah. So just beautiful pictures of polyculture. This was a fun, so at this point, the other important thing we need to do is educate and get the word out of how to do these different systems and show it hands-on, because you can't just talk about something, you have to do it to learn something. So one of the things we did at Cannafest, which is a festival down in Humboldt, the very first one was, I guess this will be the third one this year. It's on April 5th, the weekend, April 15th and 16th, I think. Is before the very first one, I wanted to build this zone to help all the cannabis growers in the area kind of see these ideas. And so we put in with the help of Dan Marr and Samara Restoration, Mike Black, and there's Oli of Humboldt Organic Gardens. We we put in a rainwater catchment system, then we put in a groundwater recharge garden that used all native plants, and basically it's designed to slow and sink the water and use the ground as the ultimate storage tank. Here we have this 2,500 gallon tank here, but then this giant tank below that we can charge up. And the best way to charge, the best like cell, like battery cell for like holding water is humus, is living soil. Every bit of, I think it's every 1% increase in humus in soil will increase the water holding capacity of an acre by 170,000 liters. So yeah, we have water issues, just keep building more humus, use less water. So we built a biodynamic compost pile, a hugelkultur, a 20-foot worm bin, and then we planted the hugelkultur with all California wild native flowers. And the idea was to attract tons of different pollinators, you know, like attract not just the honeybees, but everything else, all the little flyers, the moths, the little gnats, and all of these things that have specialized functions to create more and more diversity. This is the rainwater catchment system. This is the groundwater recharge system. And well, that's my roof, sadly enough. But I like this image because you're showing moss, and it's a gravel roof, and the only thing growing on it is this moss and these mushrooms. But neither of you know, like it just shows that synergy of everything happening, because all it is gravel and sun and water, and then you're able to get that first growth of these bryophytes, and then you got enough organic matter that the mushrooms are able to start building their networks. Well, those mushrooms have the enzymatic strategies to start breaking down those minerals, and so they're pulling the minerals out of the rock and creating a more and more thriving system through working together. And so I just like this kind of synergy. And you take that synergy and you bring it up to a big scale, and we get things like these beautiful 1,500-year-old trees that we're looking at. This is on the way up from Humboldt, just along the 101, about halfway to Crescent City. This is, yeah, if you do the big tree and the cathedral trails, I recommend it. So I like this idea. So right here, we have this, imagine this sphere. And in it, like what would be inside this sphere? Do you see anything? What's here? You know, like it looks like nothing. It's see-through. We don't even know that there's anything there. Yet everything to build those trees are right here. I mean, beyond just the biology life flying through here, we have photons flying through. We have nitrogen. We have carbon. All the carbon to build those trees. It's just right here. And that carbon doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's a bad thing because it's out of balance, and that we're out of balance. You know, it's supposed to be at 280 parts per million. That's what it was pre-industrial revolution. Right now, I think we're over 400, probably about 415 or so. Actually, anyone who has grow rooms or have a CO2 meter, I know, like looking at the first ones back in like the early 2000s, it was like 360. And now every time I look at it, it says 315, or 415. And that's just, you know, in that decade. So it's happening quick. And we need to be putting that carbon back in the ground. That carbon builds more organic material. It grows more plants. So there's Nick and Ryan checking out the soil at their spot, Green Source Garden spot. This is how they prep their half-acre rec. I'm not gonna go too far into it, but that's just a wonderful example. It's like, well, what do we do to build the soil? Like, it's not like, oh, our soil's bad. Like, no, let's add to it. Let's create it. Let's make it diverse. Let's have the biology start working on it. And by building these hugelkulturs, which is burying wood and using their farm animals and straw and organic material and building them up and creating a soil lens and mulching, you get all of this dynamic growth in life. So this is Green Source utilizing their animals and worms, and this is, yeah, I love that picture. So this is us like taking it a larger scale out in Oregon and other spots, and yeah, I hope to see more agriculture kind of starting this way, like thinking about building the soil first. So now I think one of the main things we need to be thinking about is the economic drivers. How do we make this happen in a way that will work for other people to to adapt for us to actually change agriculture. I saw this video on Vice News the other night, and I thought these are kind of the ideas for the businesses that I think we're looking for. You know, it's a little trendy.
The word sustainability is thrown around a lot in the incredibly wasteful restaurant world, and in San Francisco. But one hot new restaurant there is making the concept meaningful again. Nellie Bowles went to see just how sustainable sustainability can get.
Nathan Kaufman is the director of living systems for Perennial Restaurant.
We really tried to say, rather than grow 10% of the tomatoes or 10% of the cucumbers, let's grow 100% of the weird stuff.
He's an urban farmer who uses almost no soil and very little water to grow dozens of plant varieties.
Our Chilean blueberry, our hibiscus.
Each wackier than the next.
It's called citrus caviar. Okay. We do a ton of this for the bar. It just comes out as these little pearls, like a caviar.
We really think it's a delicious revolution.
Perennial is the latest creation of restaurateurs Anthony Mint and Karen Leibovitz, best known for their uber-trendy Mission Chinese.
In 2012, we had a daughter. We were sort of imagining our daughter growing up in the changing climate. And then when someone approached us to start another restaurant, we said, only if we can make it super sustainable.
The idea is to not just mitigate, but reverse climate change. With things like, well, perennials, plants with long life cycles and deep roots that keep more carbon sequestered in the soil.
Plants breathe in CO2, which is a greenhouse gas. Agriculture is actually the only thing that we know that can pull greenhouse gases back down.
The bread here is made with perennial grains, and the meat, yes, they have meat, comes from carbon farms, where managed grazing on perennial grasslands helps pull carbon from the air. And then, of course, there's Nathan.
Do it. You gotta do it.
I'm doing it!
Okay.
It's a vegetable that tastes like shrimp. What's not to love?
Everything about that.
Everything.
Everything.
Everything really starts with the restaurant. So I collect all the restaurant scraps. We feed those to red wiggler worms. These are our maggots in here. These guys are great. They'll basically eat all the meat and dairy and bread. We collect them on a twice weekly basis, dehydrate them, use it as our fish feed.
Maggots don't bite, right?
No.
Hello, my little hipster fish. Hello.
The greenhouse is entirely farmed using a method called aquaponics, which harnesses the power of fish poop.
So these guys are really just pooping up a storm in here, and it's the ammonia they produce that, fertilizes all of our vegetables here in the farm.
So basically, the restaurant scraps feed the worms, which feed the fish, whose poop feeds the vegetables, that feeds the restaurant.
Yeah, is there anything you want to try in particular?
What's your favorite thing?
I think actually the trout's my favorite thing. We save all of the trout bones and smoke them with the walnut shells, make a stock out of that.
Yeah, that's good.
The impact of me having dinner here versus me having dinner at another restaurant, how much more eco-friendly is this, or how?
I don't think there's a way to
is there
really
any
quantify
sense?
it. Just to be clear, we're not saying this restaurant is going to reverse climate change. So we're not trying to carry this whole thing on our own. But having learned about it, we can't not tell people.
We demonstrate so many different types of sustainability projects at the Perennial. We wanted to create something that could be scalable, that could be replicable.
To me, this feels like the pinnacle of decadence. Like we're growing tiny mini mouse watermelons for our oyster dishes.
It's kind of a new hedonism in many ways. But I think, part of, at least like my personal mantra around like sustainability, the way you subvert the dominant paradigm is by having way more fun than them and making sure they know it.
The way to subvert the dominant paradigm is to have way more fun and make sure they know we are. So yeah, let's do that. Let's have a lot of fun changing the way things are. I'm going to show you something real quick. They were talking about cows putting carbon in the
Get ready, 'cause he
end. The role of the herbivore in nature, if you've ever thought about it, and the reason I'm concentrating on this is because herbivores have gotten a bad rap in recent days. You know, cows, climate change, and all that stuff. You see, the data points to study the effect of cows on the environment are all coming from a position that does not respect and honor the herbivore in its classic role. The role of the herbivore, and the reason the planet is so full of herbivores, think about Africa, think about, you know, South America, the, you know, alpacas, think about Indochina, you know, yaks. I mean, they're all over the place.
hopefully it's still going to work. So I guess what he starts talking about is cattle feeding on the
Caribou.
grass. Oh.
There's a lot of herbivores, groundhogs, prairie, you know, everything. Is because without them, this biomass would simply turn into senescent material and just volatilize and die and quit growing. So the role of the herbivore in nature is to take this as it approaches senescence, prune it back, just like a viticulturist would prune a vineyard or an orchardist would prune an apple tree. Does anyone think ill of an orchardist? Why are you pruning your apple tree? You know, no. We think that's good. We think that's good stewardship. And that's exactly what the herbivores did. So they pruned this back to restart this rapid biomass production. Without them, it stops. The whole program stops. Now the problem is, how do we duplicate this if we don't have migratory patterns? If we don't have 4 million buffalo in a herd? If we don't have 10 million wolves chasing them? If we don't have fire? If we don't have the magnificent, amazing choreography of nature? How do we duplicate this amazing principle that hydrated, built soil, fed, you know, all the mycorrhizae and the actinomycetes and built the soils that we're still mining today? How do we duplicate that if we have a system of private land ownership and all that? Well, we do it with high-tech electric fencing, space-age microchipped electric fencing. It's almost invisible to the eye, and yet we can encircle a herd of 1,000 cows with almost an invisible wire that you would never see. I mean, visitors to our farm have to watch the wire. You know, they walk into it, you know. And so, I mean, it's practically invisible. But because it's such a strong psychological barrier, the cows learn, and they can see way better than us. In fact, they can see all the way around their heads. So, well, except for 30 degrees on their back end. So they can see this, they know it's there, and it allows us to duplicate this mobbed movement that they would have had in eons before we had private land. And so we call this mob stalking, herbivorous solar conversion, lignified carbon sequestration. And so as the biomass gets to this point, we prune it back with the herbivore, and then it begins to grow. And as the leaf area begins to get more and more chlorophyll, the growth accelerates and accelerates so that from here to here is, let's just say for sake of discussion, from here to here, this time period is 20 days. From here to here, the time period is only 10 days. All right? So it's accelerating, and then it slows off. So what we're doing is using the herbivore, in this case a cow, it could be a sheep or a goat or whatever, but in this case a cow. We're using the animal in its historic role, using high-tech electric fencing in order to leverage and stimulate the biomass production. The bottom line is that in Augusta County, where I live, which is over the mountain, in Augusta County, the average pasture The biomass production, if you dry it down and you weigh it, the biomass production on the average acre of grass in Augusta County is 2,500 pounds per year. On our farm, we've been there almost 60 years. We've never planted a seed. We've never bought a bag of chemical fertilizer. And on our farm, we average well over 10,000 pounds per acre.
So, you know, working with the animals, he's able to produce a tremendous amount more biomass. What's happening with this is carbon sequestration. The roots are growing large when the grass gets large. And then when the plants come in and eat that grass, it doesn't need that large root system. So it actually sloughs off a lot of these roots. Those roots become microbial food and it gets stored in the soil. So just the movement of animals, just mimicking the natural system of having predators move cattle around. I mean, we had 7 million buffalo doing it here, and now we don't. You know, like the tillage and all of that was a big part of dust bowls and all of our problems, but I think the fact that we don't have roaming buffalo or is a huge part of the breakdown of our system. But we can mimic that. We can kind of take some of these ideas and apply some technology and bring them up. So, you know, agriculture is the most destructive thing on the earth, and we need it to feed us. When we think about the actual amount of land that's being used for it, it's absolutely insane. So I guess for plant production, agriculture, it's about the size of South America if you added up all of the usable ag land. For animal production, we're talking about all of the added up would be the size of Africa. That's tremendous. So if we change the way we do things on that scale, that's you know, just mind-blowing. And so I'm hopeful that cannabis can show this kind of economic model that can translate to these much larger systems. So this is a great, you know, way for animals. And I want to show something real fast for crop production utilizing cover crops. And this is a solution just using a little bit of technology. Yeah, actually, let me just play this first.
Want to know a crazy secret?
Oh, actually, yeah, that's what we're here for.
From the air and putting it in the soil. In New York. And we are transitioning this farm completely to organic. No more chemicals, no more pesticides, no more herbicides. And furthermore, we're really making it organic. We're taking carbon dioxide from the air and putting it in the soil. This is what we're doing now. We grow cover crops. After a crop is harvested, we plant the field again with crops that'll live through the winter. They're green. They stay green all winter. The soil's never bare, and we photosynthesize all year long. We bring carbon out of the air and put it in the soil. And incidentally, having more carbon in the soil gives a better home for all the microbes in the soil to live in. They then can make more nitrogen available to plants naturally. That's right, nitrogen, that $40 billion industry that they pollute a lot to make, and that's ruining our oceans with runoff. That can be made naturally with bacteria under our feet while we're sequestering carbon dioxide. So you can see one solution can start to solve a lot of problems. What we're doing now is we're looking at ways of how to grow major commodity crops without chemicals, without pesticides, and come close to conventional production targets while sequestering carbon dioxide. In this system, we grow a cover crop, and then we roll it down with that red machine. It's called a roller crimper. That way, we don't have to plow the soil. We don't have to expose the carbon in the soil to the air. We have to time when we kill the cover crop with a roller crimper. We then plant right through it. It dies off as a mulch, and you see the soybeans coming up? Then the soybeans get bigger. And then they turn into that. There aren't many weeds, are there? All that cover crop is holding the weeds down. And it's protecting the soil. It's holding water in the soil, too. Water is a fundamental thing we hear about all the time as well. So this is soybeans. They're a little dubious, I know. I don't eat soybeans, but it is a major staple crop, and we need to find ways to cover our agricultural surfaces in the world where we are growing staple crops in a way that makes farmers more money and breathes carbon out of the air. The Earth's surface itself and how we interact with it is our greatest opportunity to reverse climate change. Look at this. That's a field with no cover crop. Doesn't look too good, does it? There's a field with no cover crop. There's one, and this side of it does have cover crop. That's breathing carbon in. That's letting carbon out. That's putting nitrogen in the ground. That's not. This was going to organic. This we got planted earlier, just to give you some context. This cover crop alone, in 1 year, this one actually, increased our soil organic matter by 0.7%. To put that into terms, 1 acre with that increase means we sequestered 15 tons of carbon dioxide in 1 acre. On this whole field, 750 tons of carbon dioxide in 1 year. Now, think about 1 billion acres of cropland around the world that we could be doing this on. We do all that, we might not have enough carbon dioxide left in the air to keep everything alive.
So there's another solution. Think about the entire continent of South America getting 15 tons of carbon sequestered per acre by just cover cropping and crimping and planting. And it takes out the need for using any herbicides, for using nitrogen, or any of these things. In general agriculture, it seems like, I was kind of struck actually by this thing I saw with this wheat farmer who had probably hundreds of acres of wheat farming that he was doing, and this looked like they were working really hard and had very little to show for it. It was a little shack they were kind of living in, and like poor quality food, and like I guess they were living off of like $25,000 a year, and they lost $50,000 that year. But it's like, whoa, all of this production, all this food, like, well, who's making money? And it's, the people who make the loans, the people who make the machines, the people who sell the gas and the nitrogen and the poisons. And all of that just destroys the earth. One of the big issues with carbon in the air and global warming, and all that, actually bigger than global warming, is ocean acidification, and that's destroying our foundations of life, the phytoplankton, the corals. It's absolutely devastating, and it's happening right now on a large scale, and we have to take it very seriously. These are some solutions. So to bring it back to cannabis, I kind of want to...
My journey has been really blessed. I'm happy to...
I want to showcase this thing. I helped put forward this thing for with the Emerald Cup called the Regenerative Farm
There's always
Award.
something on the fly, huh? Yeah. We didn't have all the material ready to do the concentrates. They're finalized. Okay, now though we have to reach a new level because
we have all of the winners here too. By
all
the
the materials. It's not going to work. We have to become regenerative farmers. We have to build living soils. And and I'm an old outlaw. Give me a bag of soil. I go into the woods. I get it out. I'm not a great agriculturist or great person with botany. I'm not a brilliant person like that. But there are people like that. And one of those people standing here is Jesse Dodd, who with Biovortex. And he and Jeremy Plume started the Cultivation Classic last year in Portland, and it was basically about a contest where each farm was certified as a regenerative farm, and the idea that you could teach people these methods and whatnot.
That's entirely accurate.
We wanted to incorporate that into the Cup this year, and so we have an honorary awards that we're going to do. Jesse's going to announce that. He and Jeremy and Mike Black and Jonathan Voldman and I'm trying to think of who else was in there. He'll tell you. I don't have to tell you.
This is an event with 30,000 people, by the way. And there's about 3,500
Thank you, Tim.
audience.
A big thank you to the Emerald Cup for being ahead of the curve on this concept. We are at the crossroads of legal cannabis, and we have this moment right now to make a difference in the world and do that in the way that we cultivate. If we start cultivating in a way that is good for the planet, we're benefiting the planet. We're sequestering carbon. We're building living soil. We're actually improving the situation in the way that we grow. Most agriculture is incredibly impactful and negative. It depletes our soil, it poisons our land, it poisons our water. But growing a plant shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't take all these resources. It shouldn't be impactful. It should be a pure healing process for the planet and for ourselves to grow the best medicine, which makes the best hash too, by the way. So at this moment, what we want to do is start recognizing the farms that are doing it best. The best flowers is so much fun, and having the Emerald Cup be a sun-grown organic competition is so amazing. But let's take it to that next step and really acknowledge the farms that are doing it beyond and actually healing the planet in the way that they grow. So give it up to the Emerald Cup for being ahead of the curve and being part of healing the planet through cannabis. So first, I'd like to introduce Dragonfly Earth Medicine. We have Kelly and Josh, and to me, they are the international example of regenerative cannabis. Their tireless efforts towards education, towards healing the planet is just phenomenal. Thank you, Kelly. And yeah, I'd like to give you this jar, which you'll have to come over and fill up with whatever flowers of your choice from the Biovortex booth. But this is a jar for that, and thank you so much for the work that you do.
Oh, thank you so much. This is for the plant. This is for her and everything that she's given me and all of us, and I just wanted to take a second to thank the cannabis plant.
Infinite respect and blessings.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. And look into the Dragonfly Earth Medicine Pure certification. It is a movement. It's not just like a regular certification. It's kind of a commitment towards healing the planet, and they give a lot of information for the best ways to do that. So go online, go to Dragonfly Earth Medicine, and check out the Pure certification. I also created this calendar called the Regenerative Cannabis Calendar, and it goes through the stage of the plant from soil to seed to the growth.
And we have them here, too, so you can check them out.
You can see a nice picture of some living soil. So it starts with the soil. We need to be thinking about healing the earth, having diverse microbes, and growing amazing cannabis. And so here's some picture of a pinkleberry. This is grown by Green Source Gardens. This is grown 100% closed loop. Everything was on site. They use animals. They use their forest. They use what's around them to build soil, to heal the land, and grow some of the best cannabis I've ever seen. So give it up to Green Source Gardens for being probably the best example of regenerative cannabis in the world. They actually have a rec farm that is fully compliant, fully regenerative, fully closed loop, using animals and the forest.
Thank you so much, Jesse. All I can say to everybody right now is for this to move forward, for this regenerative thing to move forward, we really need you guys to be a discerning consumer and make sure you figure out who you're buying your cannabis from and make sure those farms are taking care of the planet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Give it up for Green Source. They're the best example out there, seriously. So this is for you, and yeah, take this too. Okay, next we have Josh. Can you come out from Moongazer Farms?
So actually, this is my one regret, is both of or all of our winners actually grew as married couples. And I regret not having both of you come out. So actually, could you come up now and... No? All right, well, give it up to all of the regenerative cannabis farm winners, because over here we have Moongazer Farms.
He's a Mendocino grower.
And Josh and Sandra grew beautiful cannabis in a biodynamic way together, and I just love that it was both, that all of them happened to be couples, and I think that male and female dynamic and doing something together, it adds something to the quality of how we treat the land. So creating this, the idea is basically what Nick said. You know, we need to be consumers that care about who we're supporting and the farms that we're supporting. So be the farms that you would like to support yourself, and put that out there and teach and make sure that the dispensaries are putting that forward. And like, this is where we need to go with marketing. Marketing has brought us down a horrible road, and I just want to show this one picture real quick. So this is the kind of crap like we had in papers. This is from, I think, the late 60s. I think it was in Time. So what it says is how to kill half your garden. And then here it says the ugly half. And it's Ortho Weed Be Gone from Chevron. And it's just wild to me. It's like this picket fence and the green lawn. What's funny is it actually has these cartoon Disney flowers when their product is designed to kill flowers. Like, and keep the lawn. This dying dandelion in front because you want to kill those nasty dandelions that, you know, attract pollinators and are edible and have wonderful roots and like help everything. But kill those things. We need herbicide instead. So this is really bad. Like what happened through marketing, the way it changed the way we think, what we value, the having us out in the little cracks, spraying the little fucking Roundup everywhere. You know, like. It's just so bad. We created this anxieties that this is what it means to have a clean lawn. This is how to be a good neighbor, and it's really sick. And it's so pervasive. But it's time to completely flip that and have have it be about farming correctly and having marketing put that forward. So I like that example of perennials, and I like putting forward stuff like the Regenerative Cannabis Farm Award, and then something like this. So. I'd like to hear a big round of applause for everyone coming here from so far. Like people came from all over, you paid the money, you're sitting through this to be a part of the solution. So thank you.